The race of the starting line is one of the most important and dramatic part of racing. An advantage here would allow a racer at the front to avoid from being bundled up with those behind. Those behind include those at the front of the grid having a bad start, the ones that started in the middle of the grid, and those who started at the back of the grid that had a good start. They will bunch up and be closer together upon approaching the first corner. This makes beating this group an important advantage. So recently, MotoGP teams have introduced a technique and technology to gain that advantage. Of course, now every bike uses it, and the advantage has equalized. But when it was introduced, it certainly made an impact, not just in the sense of a launched advantage, but also it being visible. The device is called Holeshot. What it does is it lowers the motorcycle, turning it into some sort of temporary drag bike. It's very effective in MotoGP because these bikes are well overpowered, some say in excess of 300 horsepower per liter. Launching a MotoGP bike offline, dependent on the anti-wheelie and traction control, will not defy the physical center of gravity of a bike. The Holeshot device does this. It temporarily lowers the bike, and once the bike is up to speed, then the rider can switch the suspension back to normal, gaining an advantage to the first corner. Combine this with wheelie and traction control, it will definitely see all avenues in improving the launching of a MotoGP bike addressed. Because it has such a clear advantage, MotoGP teams have taken it to the next level, incorporating it active while on track. As MotoGP teams are challenged by trying to keep the front of a bike under the rider's control, preventing it from lifting if it slows down acceleration off a corner and down a straight, the earliest intervention is what is known as wheelie control, where the electronics would cut in when the rider puts in too much throttle input that would trigger its sensors, sending signals to the computer to react. Then came the front wings that would keep the front of a bike down with downforce. The front wings goes to show how powerful these bikes are. They work better at high speed, meaning even at those speeds, the bike is still prone to lifting the front wheels off the ground during acceleration. Now teams are using the rear suspension system while the rider is actively on track, not just for starts. The lowering of the rear suspension can be seen when a rider is in a slow in fast out line, triggering it when accelerating out of a corner. The front Holeshot device works with the rider compressing the front suspension, mostly done with transferring weight utilizing the front brakes. A rider would compress the front suspension until the hook reaches the latch to lock the compressed suspension in place. The compressed suspension means it is in a low position, lowering the center of gravity, ready for a launch. Once the rider feels that he does not need that posture, the rider would release the latch and the suspension will return to its natural position. This design came from way back in 1979 from motocrossing by motocross rider Arlo England. The rear suspension is very different. The monoshock linkage is replaced with a hydraulic cylinder that is connected to a pump that moves the rear suspension up and down. A rider will lower the rear suspension on the start line or off a corner, then raise it to its normal suspension travel around the rest of the track.